There's a lot of things science can't explain. Why is there a flat? Why do Lithuanians smell like that? Why does my kitty bite me even though I'm nice to it? Considering all these questions, it is obvious that science is an unreliable source to the topic I am presenting for you today. Tulpamancy. What is it, you may ask? I have no idea. Let's ask my AI that I trained on YouTube Shorts comments. Alright, that's enough of you. Tulpamancy is the practice of creating and interacting with tulpas. Tulpas are described as materialized beings or thought forms that are created through spiritual practice and or meditation. Now you might think that this sounds an awful lot like an imaginary friend a child might have, but I have to warn you that if you tell a tulpamancer that their tulpa is just an imaginary friend, they will materialize a very real fist into your jaw. According to the people who practice tulpamancy, tulpas are fully independent beings with their own personalities and opinions, but they don't just exist inside the head of the tulpamancer, also referred to as the host. They can actually take control of the host's body, meaning the person, or rather the consciousness controlling the body is now the tulpa. Tulpas have their origin in Tibetan Buddhism, where monks supposedly created them through deep meditation. In the 21st century, tulpamancy has gained traction in online communities like Reddit and the X board on 4chan, with now some Discord servers revolving around it. Some people use tulpas for companionship, others claim it's for mental health, and a small portion of those communities should be on a watch list. So, let's take a look at tulpas and tulpamancers and see what they're up to these days.
What is your name?
Fuck you.
You are Gregor Samsa. You woke up as a cockroach. Is that correct?
Yes!
Who is drawing the ponies?
What?
The ponies, Gregor. What do they mean?
Alright, we're gonna start off this topic by going over the history of tulpas, something I'm very qualified to talk about since I have access to the internet and can read. The word tulpa comes from the Tibetan term sprulpa, meaning emanation or manifestation. In Tibetan Buddhist practices, monks believed that through deep meditation, they could create thought forms so vivid and real that they would seemingly take on a life of their own. One of the more famous accounts of this comes from Alexandre David Nayel, a French explorer and Buddhist scholar who traveled to Tibet in the early 1900s. She claimed that after months of focused meditation, she successfully created a tulpa. Except, instead of manifesting some kind of wise spiritual guide, she apparently created a short, chubby monk. At first, it was just a harmless little guy, but as time went on, she claimed that it started acting independently and even took on a more sinister presence. Eventually, she had to focus intensely on dissolving it back into her mind, essentially deleting it through even more meditation. For a long time after that, tulpas stayed mostly within spiritual and esoteric circles. Occultists, New Age practitioners, and paranormal enthusiasts were fascinated by the idea of creating thought forms, and the concept occasionally popped up in books about mysticism and metaphysics. Then we got the internet. In the early 2000s, discussions about tulpas started appearing on forums dedicated to the paranormal, lucid dreaming, and thought experiments. But the big moment came around the early 2010s, when a wave of new interest in tulpas emerged from cesspools like 4chan, Reddit, and various role-playing communities. Suddenly, the practice wasn't just about spiritual meditation anymore. It became something anyone could try, even without years of Buddhist training. People began experimenting, writing guides, and sharing their experiences online. Some approached it with a more psychological mindset, seeing it as a form of controlled hallucination, while others embraced the mystical side, believing that their tulpas had genuine independent consciousness. It was interesting to look through forums like tulpa.info and see how it sort of moves away from being a spiritual practice to a hobby. But at its core, tulpamancy has always been about companionship, whether it's a spiritual guide, a friend that lives inside your head, or a pony that you just really like. Now we're getting to the parts that took the longest to make, and not because I was wasting hundreds of hours getting Prestige 2 and BattleBit remastered. Or because I was away on vacation in Czechoslovakia. Now, these parts took so long to make because I had to sift through so much information. The amount of blog posts, guides, videos, and forums dedicated to Tulpamancy is larger than I had originally anticipated. I first heard about the concept of tulpas from the X-board on 4chan from a throwaway reply. I had only recently, start of 2025, decided to look into it more and research it beyond just understanding the general concept. So to start off my research, I just typed tulpas into yap.com, as one does, which immediately revealed my location to be Singapore, of course. Reading through Wikipedia didn't help me much since I was more interested in the practices and the communities around it rather than what it is. Then I decided to go back to the X-word to just observe, but I quickly realized this wasn't the community I was after. It felt more like people from different communities sharing their experiences every time a discussion about tulpas started on the board. So the next logical place to go is of course Reddit with r/tulpas. And again, the same thing happened. It's more of a place where people come and occasionally share stories about tulpas. On here, it's more common to see new people asking questions and asking for help, since it feels more of like a safe space. So I went to tulpa.info and was surprised to see that the forum is still kind of active. The only thing I understood from reading all the threads is that coming into the space and trying to make a video about a subject like Tulpamancy with its nuances and multiple subcultures in the current year would mean that I will not be able to cover every single thing that happened from 2009. I decided then that I would focus more on the approachable side of Tulpamancy Communities, the Discord servers. I joined 2 Discord servers that I found by going to baidu.com and searching for Tulpamancy Discords. After joining, I started observing the discussions on multiple channels in the server. It finally seemed like I found a place with a proper sense of community, where the same usernames kept appearing, answering questions, giving advice to newcomers, and writing guides for others. To properly immerse myself in the subject of discussions in the server, I had to suspend my personal ideas and beliefs, but I apparently had also suspended my understanding of English because I struggled to understand a lot of what was said in the higher level discussions, even though my English level is C2 and was obviously determined by my reading of the Hulk poem. Most of the time, the discussions were as follows. Someone suggests an idea they had about tulpas, other tulpamancers debate around the idea, then someone posts a loot picture of an MLP character and the discussion dies down. The most important piece of information I gathered from reading discussions and seeing the quote-unquote modern approach to tulpamancy is that the process of creating a tulpa or tulpas has been so streamlined and has been made so attainable that most people could find a way to create one. Let's say you are more of a creative person and silence and meditation seem too boring to you because your brain is constantly filled with ideas. You can still manage to produce a tulpa by just having internal conversations with yourself rather than meditating and building a tulpa from the ground up. I am of course not a certified tulpologist, so my understanding of the process for creating a tulpa is very shallow. The main takeaway from observing the Discord servers for around 2 months is that Tulpamancy has come a long way from being a freakish thing that goblins from 4chan on the My Little Pony board do. It's now its own culture. This chapter was originally supposed to be about a research paper that I found while looking for research that was done around tulpas. Unfortunately, I later discovered this research paper was done by a very controversial figure in the community, For the Plot or Jade Ori. They apparently were using some sort of hypnosis and sending it to people in their community. There are also claims that this wasn't even the main reason why people are mad at them. It was actually their cult leaders-like tactics of manipulation and grooming that were the real issue. In any case, they were banned from the tulpa.info forums and other communities. They also later tried DDoSing the tulpa.info website, which promptly resulted in the admins contacting the FBI. Since I didn't look too deep into it, I can't say for sure what exactly occurred during that time, but not everyone agreed with the decision of banning Jade, and some people showed their support for Jade on various platforms like 4chan, Discord, Gmail, and their own skin. It was too big of a rabbit hole to read into for a video that's already kind of long and convoluted. I did find a document that gathers most of the data about Jade with a lot of weird mantras and hypnosis stuff, so I might make a video about this specific topic in the future. You could say that I still could have used the research paper even though the writer of the paper is controversial, But apparently they were also openly bragging about fabricating data in the paper, so I decided against it. One thing I did find that I would like to show you is a timeline of events for how Tulpamancy evolved on the internet. First of all, credit to Albatross from tulpa.info for creating this timeline. It's obviously not up to date as this was posted in February 2013, but it does a really good job of properly explaining all the major events that have happened since tulpas reached the modern age. It starts off by mentioning the Tibetan belief of creating thought forms, but skips over most of the history that happened after, what with the whole New Age and occultists I mentioned previously. Then it mentions how the paranormal board of 4chan X hears about tulpae, which I'm guessing is the older way of saying tulpas, and starts discussing it mostly around the metaphysical concept of tulpas. They write a few creepypastas and a few anons take it seriously and create tulpas of their own, notably Irish and fuck you man, creating the first guides. Afterwards, an IRC channel for tulpas was created by Asterisk because X grew tired of discussing tulpas on the board, so most of the people who were still interested in tulpas migrated to the channel. With X getting tired of tulpa discussion, many users migrate to other boards like Psi for science and math, JP for otaku culture, and A for anime and manga, with A also having a brief tulpa craze. Later on in the MLP board, a lucid dreaming thread turns into a tulpa thread, and tulpa mentions are common in lucid dreaming threads for about 3 threads. Then a dedicated tulpa thread is created by AJ, making MLP the new home for the tulpa community. During that time, smaller tulpa communities start appearing elsewhere on the internet, where they host discussions, creepypastas, and guides. Around April 2012, a member of the tulpa community, Plebe, registers tulpa.info, and towards the end of the month, the site goes live and becomes the then permanent home for the community, which allows it to grow into the largest resource for tulpa research. Then other sites take notice, like Wikipedia linking to the newly found forum and Reddit having sections dedicated to tulpas, with more blogs and other resources being created. I found an interesting comment on that timeline that said that tulpa interest in the West has a cyclical resurgence about every 20 to 40 years, and that really seems to be true. I'm not suggesting that we're somehow at the end of interest in tulpas, since the internet allows for any community to thrive endlessly, with more new members joining every day to account for members who might have lost interest. I'm saying that the explosion of interest is probably over, which is kind of a shame. I would have loved to see how people learned about it with so little information at the time. What sort of theories people came up with. Okay, this part is basically postscriptum. I don't have to mention that to you since you have no idea what goes behind the scenes here. Could be naked right now for all you know, but I'm glad we are developing a little honesty between us. This is going to be just a short footnote. The research paper that Jacob J. Eiler, aka For the Plot Jade Ori, published mentions another study by Professor Samuel Vizier from McGill University in Montreal, Canada. His study was actually the first instance of scientific accounts about tulpas and tulpamancy communities. It has a lot of words with numbers mixed in it, which would suggest that he surveyed the participants of his study and categorized them. Not going to delve any deeper into it, time to talk to some tulpamancers. When I first dreamt up the concept for this video, as I usually do, I really wanted to add a segment to it that would be me having a conversation with tulpamancers, asking them questions and just generally talking about tulpamancy. So I posted in the Tulpamancy Discord servers I was in about how I'm looking for tulpamancers to do an interview with me for a video. And while I received some responses from people asking to participate, all of them asked for it to be over text rather than a voice call. I was a bit disappointed, but I do realize that asking strangers to get on a call with you so you can prod them for answers about stuff that goes on inside their head is a bit much. So we'll now go over answers I've received from tulpamancers about the practice. I started it off with some general questions about how they heard about tulpas in the first place, what made them want to make one for themselves, and how many tulpas they currently have. What was interesting about this is most of them heard about tulpas from different places on the web rather than it being just Reddit or 4chan, and almost all of them immediately started looking into the rabbit hole. Next, I asked how long have they been practicing tulpamancy and how many tulpas they currently have, and received varying answers that explain that more practice years doesn't necessarily mean more tulpas. The amount is different for each practitioner and depends on the tulpamancer. Then we moved on to the process of creating a tulpa, where I asked them to share the techniques they use to create tulpas, how they perceive them, and how they view the process itself. When asked about the techniques they use or used, Most of them answered relatively the same, with it being some form of meditation or just generally going about your life with the notion that in your head exists another entity which you can converse with until it becomes a reality. Also worth mentioning is that almost all of them exclaimed that old guides, or sometimes even new ones, weren't that helpful for their case, and developing their own approach was far better. Asking about how quickly they started perceiving the tulpas as separate entities revealed another element in tulpamancy that changes from one to another, with some saying it took them about a day, while for others it took much longer, with the clear difference between practitioners being how used they are to talking and responding to themselves. After throwing in a more theoretical question, answers started varying wildly from one to another with little to no similarities between responses, with some saying it's mainly psychological, since the tulpa master doesn't wield some magical power to create tulpas, and one saying that there might not be a difference between tulpamancy and conversing with God, which reminds me of a comic I saw on Twitter. I then presented questions regarding the tulpamancer's perception of their tulpa, and all of them said that they usually only have internal perception of the tulpas, with most not even bothering with visuals outside of what is called the Wonderland, which is sort of the place in their mind where the host and the tulpas can do stuff. When we talked about the personalities of their tulpas and asked how they differ from their own, if they do differ, all of them said that yes, their tulpas' personalities are different from both the hosts and other tulpas in the system, though mentioning that experiences are shared among the entities, so worldview similarities are bound to happen. So I asked further if their tulpas sometimes surprise them with opinions and received another yes across the board, with all hosts saying that their tulpa can say or sometimes even act in a way that would be unexpected, such as having an opinion about another person that differs from the hosts, or agreeing with the host on something the host thought they disagree on. We moved on to questions about switching and possession, and when I asked the hosts about how it feels to give over control of the body to a tulpa, something I thought would be an identical experience across all tulpamancers, I received different responses to how exactly it feels. All of the participants tried to explain to me how they feel while the tulpa takes control, saying it feels like you're in a lucid dream, or that stuff feels normal but your intent feels different. It's very hard to imagine what that might feel like, even if they could properly describe it. So I accepted their answers and moved on to the next question about how the tulpas experience the world while in control. The answers again differed from one host to another, though it could just be different levels of experience and possession, with more experienced tulpamancers saying that their tulpas don't exactly have different experiences, while others saying it feels like their tulpa is experiencing the world as a kid, in awe of everything. When I asked about how much control they have over possession and if it can happen whenever the tulpa decides, they all said that they are in full control always, and it's usually a conscious decision the host makes. We moved on to more casual questions about their daily life with the tulpa. They all said that they talk to the tulpas as much as possible, valuing their interactions, and when I asked whether this helped their mental and emotional state, most said not really. They all said that they don't usually tell people outside the internet about the tulpas, which is probably a good choice. I then asked to converse with the tulpas and ask them some questions, starting off with how they would describe themselves to someone who is unfamiliar with the concept. They all said that they usually don't describe themselves, but when they do, they just simplify it and condense it to either an imaginary friend or just another personality inside the host's head. When I asked the tulpas about their relationship with their host, most of them hinted at it being romantic and that they love their host, which didn't surprise me. You wouldn't create an entity in your head that hates you. The rest of the questions for the tulpas were more about their personalities, and this segment is already extremely long, so I'm just gonna end it with the final question I presented to the hosts. If someone is curious about creating tulpas, what advice would you give them? Most of them said that if you're curious, you should join a community and ask questions and also just generally try it. Apparently it's not a big commitment. Alright, let's fucking end this video already. Internet subculture videos are difficult to produce since you have to condense a lot of information into a single video and also make it watchable. The video was never supposed to be a tutorial for starting tulpamancers or even an introduction for people who are interested. It is purely an interesting topic I wanted to talk about and present my findings on. Now that I've done that, I can finally relax and enjoy my YouTube Premium subscription that I bought with my Twitch money. For a few moments there, I really thought I had created the tulpa myself accidentally, but then I just remembered I'm clinically insane. I hope you Daydems enjoyed this video. Liking it helps me since I like seeing numbers go up. Make sure to also comment and tell me your most recent dream, and join my Discord if you want me to make fun of you in creative ways. Next video will be uploaded soon. Alright, talk to you later.